Pakistan Economic Growth and Challenges in 2000 to 2005 by Rohan Tohid 190.175.
Hello everyone, my name is Rohan Tawhid Sayed, and me and my group will be presenting Pakistan's economy, both its limitations, problems, as well as its opportunities for the last 20 years. I will begin this by explaining the first 5 years of that period, specifically from 2000 to 2005. Now, what's interesting about this particular period is that there is hardly any drawback to the economy during this period. At this by this point, Pakistan was under a military government for the fourth time in its history. This time under General Pervez Musharraf, and he along with Finance Minister and then Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz enacted such effective economic reforms that Pakistan's economy started to rise on a global level at the point. Shaukat Aziz was a technocrat as well as a businessman and former banker who had no affiliations with any political party, so Musharraf appointed him as finance minister, and later would turn out he would be the most effective in in all of Pakistan's history. Another thing for this time period is that a lot of much needed foreign and direct investment came into Pakistan in the form of US aid, as the war on terror had officially begun by 2001. During this time, the US and its allies were at war with Afghanistan, and Pakistan, being so closely situated with the border of Afghanistan, was in a perfect position to reap the rewards of said war. Much needed foreign aid came in the form of money and weapons. That the economy as well as the military of Pakistan started to become quite effective. Also during this period, about one the country's foreign reserves were valued at around 10.7 billion by the end of 2005. This was in stark contrast to the beginning of 2001, where its reserves were valued at 1.2 billion. So you can see that the reforms enacted were so successful that 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 they achieved this. Also, a policy of deregulation was put into action, specifically with regards to Pakistan's telecommunication and internet sectors. At the time, only one firm was allowed to distribute and sell internet and telecommunications access, and that was the state-run PTCL. However, with this deregulation came in a lot of private companies and individuals who sought to claim the market share in Pakistan's growing internet and telecommunications markets. So it evolved from a more competitive telecommunication market, evolved to a competitive telecommunication market from a monopoly. Along also because of this, financial speculation increased in the economy, so much so that the stock market itself was doing quite well, which in this regard and a lot of private individuals started to invest heavily in all sectors of the Pakistan economy. By 2005, Pakistan's total GDP rose by 9%, which was in stark contrast to the 5% in 2004. At this point, it was the highest rate in the world at that time. So it can be seen that Musharraf and Shaukat Aziz's reforms were quite successful at the time. Also, by this time, GDP per capita rose as well by about $71, from $706 to $777, which indicated that the, that the gap. Anyhow, also during this time, significant infrastructure projects were launched into the country. Chief among them being the building of a new commercial port in the Pakistani province of Balochistan, specifically near the coast at Gwadar. Now, before the construction of this port began, all commercial traffic was routed through the port in Karachi. Now, with this port, it now the Iranian port of Chabahar now had a rival port by transporting oil and goods to the Persian Gulf into mainland Europe.
Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2006 to 2010 by Faisal 190.177.
Pakistan economy started to gain traction and it was one of the strongest growths in years for Pakistan economy. In 2006 and 7, Pakistan's economic growth exceeded 7%. This was mainly because of extensive growth in agriculture, manufacturing and servicing departments of the country. During 2006 and 2007, Pakistan was also one of the largest growing economies in whole of Asia. This was a result of mainly very good economic policies which benefited the country in international marketplace as well. There was a strong domestic demand during the whole year followed by investment from abroad and from within. A strong economic growth of 7%, strong recovery in overall agriculture growth at 5%, and major crops at 7.6% at the back of the highest ever production of wheat in the country's history, and an impressive 22.6% increase in sugarcane production, which was highest production level in history. Large scale manufacturing grew by 8.8%, the real per capita GDP grew by 5.2% and has maintained an average growth of 5.5% per annum over the last 4 years. There were some plans which were not achieved during this fiscal year. Firstly and most importantly, the rate of inflation was still way higher than the target. It was 7.9%. 2008 was a rough year for the economy of Pakistan. It faced a severe financial crisis. There was a substantial decline in exports of Pakistan and also a very visible decline in the foreign direct inflows. This was mainly because of the financial crisis which the world suffered in 2008. There was also a high fiscal and current account deficit. Inflation, which was also an international problem at the time, affected Pakistan. The GDP rate declined from 6.8% in 2007 to 4.1% in 2008. The fiscal and current account deficit also reached the highest ever, which was 7.4% and 8.4% GDP respectively. The foreign exchange reserves were deteriorated. The foreign exchange reserve also faced major problems due to the balance of payment crisis, compelled government of Pakistan to approach IMF for a bailout package. Despite one of the biggest economic crises in the country, the macroeconomic stability achieved since 2008 led to a moderate recovery in economy. The economy grew by 4.1% in the outgoing year after a low growth of 1.2% in 2008. Though the economy was still fragile and stabilization needed to be consolidated so that the gains over the past two difficult years were not lost. Not all the sectors of the places in country saw an uprise in economy. With a lot of challenges faced, the macroeconomic context still faced difficulty and inconsistency. As the global economy was still suffering, the Pakistani exports remained an uncertainty. There was an energy and water shortage and also a security threat in the year of 2009 and 2010. Despite many challenges, the economy still showed resilience. The GDP for 2009 and 2010 on an inflation adjusted basis was recorded at 4.1% compared to 1.2% of the previous year. The unemployment rate also increased to 5.5% from 5.2% in the previous year, mainly due to increased urban employment to 7.1% from 6.3%. There was also a decline in fixed investment by private sector resulting in a contraction of 3.5%. There was also a decline in foreign direct investment. It fell to 32% in 2009. Overall, the year 2009 and 2010 was still rough for Pakistan's economy, mainly because of a rough financial crisis in the previous year. Efforts were made to restore the economy.
Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2011 to 2015 by Hamza Ali 191164.
Hello everyone, my name is Hamza and I'll be guiding you through the main economic events of the years 2010 to 2015. Now, some of you may remember that in 2010 we received some of the worst floods that we had ever received in our history up to that point. The cause of which was, as you might guess, heavy rain from the monsoon season. The destructive rain began in mid July and lasted till August. The floods were so bad that the destruction cost amounted to more than $40 billion. Now, Pakistan did attempt to get some aid from the UN. They asked for 420 million euros, of which we received only 20%, which was 84 million euros. Then in 2013, the Chinese premier visited Pakistan to finalize the details in the creation of the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC for short, which was a plan to create a lot of infrastructure projects in Pakistan to facilitate trades between the two countries. Uh, this was basically creating roads, railways, highways, so that trade could more freely happen. There was also a plan to turn Gawadar into a major port. Now, the critics of this plan said that this plan was basically a debt trap to lure Pakistan into a state of debt. However, Pakistan has stated that this isn't based on some sort of loan financing where we go further in debt, but instead it's based on joint ventures. So we'll have other methods of raising capital. Then in 2013 of September, after Nawaz Sharif had regained power as Prime Minister, an IMF loan of $6.7 billion was approved. This loan package had, of course, conditions attached to it, as they usually do, that with this loan package, economic reforms had to be passed which would stimulate economic growth, and attempts would be made to solve the tax evasion problem that Pakistan had. Because Pakistan has one of the worst tax to GDP ratios in the entire world. Now, while this whole plan was largely unsuccessful, Pakistan was able to achieve a higher credit score and its GDP increased. So, some good did come out of it. The loan package was deadlined by 2016. Now, tourism is a big part of the Pakistani economy. In 2013, tourism brought the country $298 million, and by 2015, it was 2% of the GDP. Now, since it's an important part of the economy and the GDP, when something happens that may disrupt it, that's problematic. One of the things that does tend to disrupt things like this is terrorism, which we unfortunately received a lot of. So the military made a plan where what would happen was they launched operations to destroy terrorism throughout Pakistan, but especially in the northern areas. So the military did their best to attempt to destroy terrorism throughout Pakistan. The plan started in 2013 and went on till like 2017. In addition to this, other measures to help with tourism were also done. Like the tourist visas were relaxed to facilitate the growing tourism industry.
Pakistan Economic Growth and Challenges in 2016 to 2020 by Mohammed Nabil 191165. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammed Nabil and today I am going to discuss the Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2016 to 2020. First of all, Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2016. Large scale manufacturing grew 3.9% in the first half of the fiscal year 2016, from a rise of 2.7% in the same period the year earlier, boosted by low raw material prices, expanded construction, and low interest rates. However, textile production grew by only 1% over the same period due to the weaker demand in exports market and increased competition with falling global commodity prices and heavy rains damaging cotton output. Pakistan's vital agriculture sector is expected to experience slower growth in fiscal year 2016. The key challenges impending stronger economic growth include poor infrastructure and transport connectivity, weak governance and institutions, and limited access to the finance, which hinders investment in key infrastructure. That in turn raises the cost of doing business, undermines productivity, and hinders access to the public service. Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2017. A drop in a rupee value and an absent finance minister, the economy has had a rough year. There were a lot of fairly good economic indicators as well in 2017, such as following: an 8.5% growth in the large scale manufacturing, an inflation rate of 3.9%, a super strong growth in lending to the private sector, a 74.4% growth in the foreign direct investment worth $939.7 million, 19.5% growth in the Federal Board of Revenue tax revenue, and a double-digit growth in exports. Now, Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2018. In the first quarter of the fiscal year 2018, over 2 billion were spent on the debt servicing and finance spending also increased. Respectively, we live as a nuclear armed Muslim nation in a hostile region where the definition of the terrorism has blurred over the past decades to suit the interests of those in the power, given our expenditures, be it our need to fence our one border at the cost of $532 million, move the general headquarters GHQ to Islamabad at a cost of 100 billion rupees, launched a 600-ton maritime patrol vessel MPV, or get more J-17 Thunders, we need more tax revenues. Pakistan economic was dwindling from foreign exchange reverse, low exports, high inflation, growing fiscal deficit, and current account deficit. Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2019. Pakistan growth rate declined to 3.3% from 5.8% during the government's first year and is projected to further decline to 2.4% by the end of the fiscal year 2020. During fiscal year of 19, around 1 million people have lost their jobs, and as the growth rate continues to slow down, It is estimated that 0.8 million to 1 million more people would lose jobs during the fiscal year of 2020. 1 million job loss has pushed 4 million people below the poverty line. The industrial sector's production and the activity has reduced by 30 to 40%, and the single digit inflation rate in 2018 increased to the 12.28% in the November 2019. The inflationary pressure hit the rural areas the worst, where the income of the people has not increased to meet the food inflation at the 20%. However, inflation will decelerate slightly to 11.8% in fiscal year of 2020. Now, Pakistan economic growth and challenges in 2020. Pakistan is a developing country. Its economy is weak. Beside, the country is in deep grip of increasing the political turmoil, expanding terrorism, incessant sectarian violence, social instability, and economic degeneration. Increase in the debt and import and decrease in the export. Saving investment, tax collection, and lack of policy implementation, excessive taxation are some of the challenges faced by the Pakistan economy. Decentralization is one of the factors which can help increase the economy of the country. The global lender approved the $6 billion loan to Pakistan, which is facing significant economic challenges on the back of large fiscal and the financial needs and weak and unbalanced growth. In the last quarter of 2019, the government announced on the Pak-China Free Trade Agreement (FTA) stated that effective January 1, 2020, the new FTA will allow Pakistan a duty-free access to the Chinese market for the many textile and the apparel categories including cotton, yarns, woven and knitted garments and home textiles. Thank you.